75 years old, broke, forgotten, and yet, somehow, still standing. That is the story of Don Johnson, a man who once had it all. The money, the mansions, the fame, the fast cars, and the kind of Hollywood lifestyle that most people only ever dream about. But today, after losing almost everything he built, the world is looking at him again and asking the same question. What on earth happened to Don Johnson? And more importantly, what does he look like now after all of it? If you think you already know his story, I promise you, you do not. Because the real Don Johnson story is far more shocking, far more heartbreaking, and honestly, far more inspiring than anything the tabloids ever told you. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to see this man in a completely different light. Before we talk about where Don Johnson is today, you have to understand just how high he flew. Because you cannot fully feel the weight of someone's fall until you know exactly how bright they were shining before it all came crashing down. And Don Johnson? He was not just bright. He was blinding. Back in the 1980s, Don Johnson was the kind of man that made people stop whatever they were doing and pay attention. He was the face of Miami Vice, one of the most iconic television shows in American history. Every single week, millions of people tuned in just to watch him, not just for the storylines, but for him. The way he carried himself, the white linen suits, the designer stubble, the cool, effortless confidence that made him look like he was born for the camera. And, in many ways, he was. At his peak, Don was pulling in enormous paychecks per episode. He owned a spectacular ranch in Colorado, a mansion in Hollywood, and a luxury property in Miami. His garage was not filled with regular cars. We are talking Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Porsches sitting side by side like a private showroom. He was friends with Jack Nicholson. He recorded music with Barbra Streisand. He was so famous, so untouchable, that even his fashion choices changed the way men dressed across America. Stores ran out of pastel shirts. Shoe departments reported a spike in loafer sales because men saw Don Johnson wearing no socks and decided that was the new standard. That is the kind of cultural power this man had. And to top it all off, his daughter, with actress Melanie Griffith, a girl named Dakota Johnson, would go on to become one of the most talked about actresses of her generation. Don Johnson was not just a celebrity. He was a dynasty. But here is the thing about dynasties. They can crumble faster than they were built. And nobody knew that better than Don himself. Now, to truly understand how Don Johnson lost it all, you have to go back to the very beginning. Because this man did not start with money. He did not start with connections, or fancy schools, or Hollywood parents. He started with almost nothing. Donnie Wayne Johnson was born on December 15, 1949, in a tiny place called Flat Creek, Missouri. His mother was only 16 years old when she had him. His father was just 19. Two teenagers trying to raise a child while barely keeping a roof over their heads. Money was always tight. Stress was always present. And love, real consistent parental love, was often in short supply. The family eventually moved to Wichita, Kansas, and that is where Don spent most of his childhood. But it was not a warm and cozy upbringing. His parents were frequently absent, always stressed, always struggling. And when Don was just 12 years old, they divorced. He was the oldest child, which meant he felt everything more deeply than the younger ones did. By the time he was 16, he had already decided he could not stay. He packed up and left home, a teenager with no money, no plan, and no safety net. Just that raw, burning desire to be something more than what life had handed him. And that fire, that desperate need to prove himself, is exactly what pushed him toward acting. It started almost by accident. In high school, he needed extra credits and ended up joining the drama program. His teacher saw something in him immediately and cast him as Tony in West Side Story. The moment Don stepped onto that stage, something shifted inside him. He later described it as feeling love from an audience for the very first time. After years of emotional hunger at home, the applause filled something in him that nothing else ever had. He was hooked. He earned a partial scholarship to the University of Kansas and majored in drama. Then later transferred to the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, one of the most respected acting schools in the country. Through the late 60s and early 70s, he took every small role he could find. Low-budget films, theater productions, television guest spots. He was grinding, auditioning, getting rejected, coming back, and doing it all over again. And then in 1984, after more than a decade of almost making it, the moment finally arrived. Don Johnson was cast as Detective Sonny Crockett on Miami Vice. And the world was never quite the same after that. But here is where the story takes a darker turn. Because everything that made Don Johnson so magnetic on screen, that reckless energy, that live-in-the-moment attitude, that absolute refusal to play it safe, those same qualities were quietly destroying him off-screen. Fame arrived fast, and it arrived loud. And with it came the full force of Hollywood's most dangerous temptations. The parties were constant. The lifestyle was extravagant beyond anything he had ever imagined growing up poor in Kansas. And somewhere along the way, Don started using substances to keep up with it all. The long filming hours, the pressure to always be on, the loneliness that lives at the center of even the most glamorous lives. He later admitted openly that illicit substances and alcohol became his escape. He said it does not become a problem immediately. It takes time. And by the time he realized how deep he was in, the damage had already spread into every corner of his life. His relationships suffered. His judgment suffered. And slowly, quietly, his finances began suffering too. His love life during this period was nothing short of chaotic. Don Johnson has been married 5 times to 4 different women. 2 of those marriages were so short and so impulsive that they were annulled within days. But the relationship that defined him romantically, the one that truly captured the public's imagination, was with actress Melanie Griffith. They first met on a film set in 1973. By the time Melanie turned 18, they were engaged and married. But within months, they had separated and divorced. Years later, in 1989, they found their way back to each other and remarried. Together, they had Dakota Johnson. But even the second chapter of their love story could not hold. By 1996, it was over again. Melanie later said that Don was not easy, that they were changing in different directions. And Don, reflecting on it all, said that he believes love never truly dies. It just changes into something else. But all of those relationships, the marriages, the breakups, the child support, the high-profile romances with women like Barbra Streisand and others, all of it came with a financial cost that Don never truly got ahead of. And then came the moment that genuinely stunned the world. In November 2002, Don Johnson was traveling through Europe when German customs officers stopped him at the Swiss-German border. What they found inside his briefcase stopped everyone cold. Financial documents connected to bank accounts reportedly worth over $8 billion. Not cash. Documents. Investment paperwork, international transfer records, sensitive financial files that raised enormous red flags with investigators. Don was detained and questioned. Officials publicly stated that there was reasonable suspicion he may have been carrying documents on behalf of others. The money laundering investigation that followed made headlines globally. Don maintained immediately and consistently that he was simply traveling with business associates and that the documents were connected to a legitimate film financing deal. And after a full investigation, German authorities cleared him completely. No charges, no arrest. But the damage to his reputation was already done. The headlines stuck, the questions lingered, and the Hollywood community, which had already begun to pull back from him, pulled back even further. By the early 2000s, the acting offers were slowing down significantly. The big paychecks were no longer arriving. But Don's spending had not slowed down at all. Multiple homes, luxury vehicles, expensive legal battles, child support obligations, and a lifestyle built on the assumption that the money would always keep flowing. It did not. In 2004, Don Johnson came within hours of losing his stunning 10,000-square-foot mountain property in Aspen, Colorado. Court documents revealed he had defaulted on a loan of nearly $1 million, and the bank was moving toward foreclosure. He was saved at the very last minute by what many described as a mysterious financial arrangement that even insiders could not fully explain. Some said it was a private investor. Others believed he sold off personal valuables. Nobody knew for certain. But the world now knew something that felt almost impossible to believe. Don Johnson, the man who had personified American wealth and cool for an entire decade, was nearly homeless. He owed money to multiple creditors, a hospital, a law firm, even a local liquor store. The man who once vacationed on yachts and flew private was now scrambling to keep the lights on. In 2008, desperate for financial relief, Don filed a lawsuit against a production company for $23 million in unpaid profits from his show Nash Bridges. He argued the show had generated over $1 billion in distribution and syndication deals, and that he had never received his rightful share. The legal battle was long and brutal, but Don won. A jury awarded him $23.2 million. It was a lifeline, but by that point, his reputation for financial recklessness had already followed him everywhere he went. So where is Don Johnson today? What does this man look like at 75 after everything life has thrown at him? Here is the truth. He looks like a survivor. He looks like a man who went through the fire, got badly burned, and decided to walk out the other side anyway. He is sober. He has been open about his journey through addiction and recovery and speaks about it with an honesty that is genuinely rare in Hollywood. He is close with his children, including Dakota, who has openly credited her father with being a bigger part of her life than most people realize. He has found real, lasting love with his wife Kelly Flager, a former preschool teacher he married in 1999. No drama, no scandal, just 2 decades of quiet, steady commitment. And, professionally, he never fully disappeared. He took on character roles, appeared in films and television in ways that reminded people just how talented he always was. His appearance in the 2024 Netflix film Rebel Ridge introduced him to an entirely new generation of viewers who had no idea they were watching a living legend. Don Johnson does not look like a broken man. He looks like a man who finally knows exactly who he is. The recklessness is gone. The desperation is gone. What is left is something far more valuable than any Ferrari or Aspen mansion ever was. It is wisdom. Hard-earned, painfully learned, completely real wisdom. He once had everything money could buy and lost most of it. And what he has now, his sobriety, his family, his peace, cannot be taken away by any bank or creditor or tabloid headline. Looking back at his life, the pattern is clear. The downfall did not happen because Don Johnson was unlucky. It happened because fame arrived before maturity did. Because spending replaced saving. Because the wrong people were trusted with the right opportunities. Because addiction quietly dismantled everything that success had built. But the comeback, slow and unspectacular as it may have looked compared to his Miami Vice days, is real. And at 75, Don Johnson is proof that it is never too late to rebuild. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. And sometimes, enough is everything.